we have to simplify 1 over 2 I to the power of 7. In order to do this, we need to remember that I to the power of 2 equals -1. And also we need to remember that the exponent represents how many times you have to multiply the base. In this case, the I is the only one that is elevated to the exponent. 1/2 doesn't have any exponent. Well, it has 1, but that's it. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over 2. And then I'm going to write 7 i's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, again, I know that I to the power of 2 is -1. So I'm going to group this into 2's. So let's rewrite this. This is going to be 1 over 2. I is I that is by itself. And then I squared. That represents these 3 little groups elevated to the power of 3. Because I have 3 groups with I squared. Let's see if this works. The power to a power rule tells me when I have a power elevated to another power, I multiply the exponents. So I squared to the power of 3, that is I to the power of 6, plus the one that I have here is I to the power of 7, which is what I had at the beginning. So let's simplify this. It's going to be 1 over 2, I, and then I squared, but I know that I squared is -1 to the power of 3. Every time you have a negative number elevated to an odd power, the answer is going to be negative. So this means that -1 elevated to the power of 3 is -1. And let me show you why. -1 to the power of 3 is the same thing as -1 times -1 times -1. So -1 times -1, that is +1. 1 times -1, that is -1. So you see, you end up with a negative number. So this means that you will have 1 over 2i and then times -1. So the final answer will be 1/2 times -1, that is -1/2 I. Let's try another example. I to the power of 42. Now I'm not about to draw 42 i's. So what I'm going to do instead is that I'm going to write I to the power of 2. And then I'm going to think, 2 elevated to what power is going to give me 42? Well, I have to divide. So 42 divided by 2, that is 21. Let's see if that works. 2 times 21 is 42, so that represents the 42 i's. So that's fine. Let's try this other one. So let's try to simplify this. I to the power of 2 is -1. -1 to the power of 21 is going to be -1. Why? Because 21 is an odd number, and every time that you elevate a negative number to an odd power, you will end up with a negative number. So that's the answer, -1. Let's try another one. We're going to try -6i to the power of 14. So it's going to be -6 I to the power of 2, and all of this elevated to the power of 7. Why 7? Because 7 times 2 is 14. It is important to notice that the -6 is not being affected by the 14. If we had this whole thing in parentheses, then it will be affected. But since we don't have parentheses, that means that the I is the only one that is elevated to the power of 14. Thus, that is the only one that is affected by the exponent. So this is what we have, -6, and then I squared is -1. So -1 to the power of 7. Again, -1 elevated to another number is going to be negative. So we will have -6 times -1, which is +6. And the last example, I to the power of 63. 63 is an odd number, so I cannot divide it by 2 evenly. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to write this as I times I to the power of 62. That way I have the 63 i's, and I have an even number. So now I'm going to rewrite I to the power of 62. So we have I times I squared, and then I squared elevated to the power of 31. Why 31? Because 31 times 2 is going to give me the 62. So this is I, and then again I squared is -1, so -1 to the power of 31. That is going to be negative. Negative times I, negative I. And that's the answer.